everyone. I'm Brianda Nava, and I'm here to remind you that you are an amazing multidimensional human being. If you don't know me, I teach about the 7 dimensions of wellness, and I also have a podcast called Built from the Inside Out. So I wanted to address that real quick before I jump into this video because I feel like I just changed up my content and didn't even acknowledge it or address it. So I will still be doing the podcast whenever you see the thumbnail where it's me and another person. That's the podcast. That's an episode of me interviewing someone. And then when you see the thumbnail of just me, then that is me doing a solo episode. And I wanted to do that because there's a lot of things that I have been wanting to share that I've been learning. And the easiest way to do that is to just go ahead and do it on my own. But I will still be interviewing people because I still have a lot of people in my life who have amazing insights and a lot to teach us, and a lot of things that I can learn from them and then share with you all. But I just wanted to address that quickly. Okay, so today's episode, we're going to be diving into the vocational dimension. So, we're going to be talking about purpose and how what we do for a living is also serving others. So money is great and God does want us to prosper. He wants us to be wealthy. Yes, all of those things are in the Bible, but he also tells us not to put that before our purpose. So in the Bible, it says that we were all given different gifts. And I'm going to read that verse. So Romans 12:3 says, "For the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you." So here is basically saying, don't think that you're better than anyone. You each get a gift from God, and there's not one gift that is better than the other. You're all equally useful. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. So here it's saying, so like you have an arm and you have a leg, you need both. It's not like the leg is better than the arm or the arm is better than the leg. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesizing, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. And if it is to lead, do it diligently. And if it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. A lot of people, like myself included, I went through life, most of my life, just kind of drifting by, not really knowing what my purpose was. I was very lukewarm. I did grow up in a Christian home, like I said before, but I did stray. When I went off to college, there were certain things that I was taught at home that I didn't agree with. And later, when I started studying the Bible for myself, I realized that that's not what the Bible actually says, or some things were what it said, but it just wasn't explained to me in the way that I could understand. So, thankfully, God is merciful, and I was able to return and actually study it for myself and read it for myself and realize that it's not just Bible stories. It's actually a very, very deep book, and it is a guide to life. If a lot of self-help books have been written um, off of the Bible. So I forever was looking for a purpose. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something that served others, but I also wanted to make money off of it. So I've always liked psychology. And that was my dream, to be a psychologist, to have that doctor in front of my name. But I was scared. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to emotionally detach from traumatic situations, probably because I myself hadn't done the healing that needed to be done. And as I got older, I personally went through therapy. I healed some things. I won't say all because I feel like we are a work in progress. We're always a work in progress. But I have been learning so many different things that have helped me. And so now I feel more ready or more capable of being able to help others, of course, with the help of God. But uh, so I decided to go back to school and get my license in Christian counseling. And I will be sharing with you guys the things that I'm learning along the way. I'm actually really excited about that. But throughout the process, I did do a lot of searching, trying to figure out who I am, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are. And I did a lot of different personality tests, some of them professional ones, other I even like read like what my zodiac was, which I don't even believe in, and now I understand what it actually means, and I wouldn't rely on that at all. But archetypes, all sorts of things, right? And I came across a book on numbers, and this is not Bible related. Like I said, I've read a lot of different stuff, some good, some questionable. But this book was on numbers, and it came down to what your theme number was. Mine came out to be 7, and I actually started finding a lot of things that I resonated with based on this number. I already had chosen the 7 dimensions. I was born in September, which is month 7. I mean, in our calendar is the ninth month, right? But sept 7. Um, my name has 7 letters. There's just so many coincidences. And then what it said about the number 7, I could really relate to. And then when I learned about the archetypes, I took a test on that, came out to be the sage, which is the wise person. And I could also relate a lot to that. I love to read, I love to study, I love learning. Once I kind of brought it all together, I was asking God to show me what my gift was because the Bible does talk about gifts. And I'm going to read to you First Corinthians 12:13 is where it starts. And it says, just as a body, again, though one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. So we are all a part of his body. We each have a purpose. We each have an assignment, right? And then, of course, he gives us free will. So it is up to us whether we fulfill that purpose or not. For we were all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. So if you watched my last video on, I talked about the Trinity and how I explained how the Spirit works. This is basically what it is saying. So we all have the Spirit in us, and that is how we are all connected and we are all a part of Him. Now, if the foot should say, because I am not the hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in our body, every one of them, just as He wanted them to be. Okay, so this is basically just going back saying we each have a function. So it doesn't matter if you're like, no, I don't want to do that. It's you were born with a purpose. And this is something that I have always known. I just never knew what my gift was, right? So, 1 Corinthians 12:27 says, now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it. And God has placed in the church, first of all, apostles, second, prophets, third, teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healing, of helping, of guidance, and of different kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? Now eagerly desire the greater gifts. So, we don't all have the same gifts, we all have different gifts. And like I said, I've read a lot of things. I read things in the Bible, things that don't go with the Bible, and just putting them together, I've asked God to kind of help me find mine. 1 Corinthians 12:7 says, "Now to each one the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good." So these gifts come from the Spirit. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by that one Spirit, to another miraculous powers, and to another prophecy, to another distinguishing between spirits, to another speaking in different kinds of tongues, and to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and He distributes them to each one just as He determines. So He decides what our gifts are, right? So I talked about archetypes. If you guys are not familiar with that, I did a podcast with Alexi Turner, and she talks about four for women and four for men. Originally, they come from a psychologist, Carl Jung. He was from Freud's time, and he says that we each have an archetype, and so it's basically a different personality. We each have all of them in us, but there is one that is more dominant. So originally in his, there are 12 archetypes. Now a lot of people are teaching them as eight, four for women, four for men. And then there's other people who do seven for women, seven for men. And I took the test of the one where it's seven for women, and I came out to be the sage, which I expected because I'm someone who I said loves to read, loves to learn, very curious. I always want to know. I'm the one that's gonna go down the rabbit hole, basically. So I was reading about the sage, and it said on there like what the gift was, and the gift was wisdom. And then I was reading more into it, and the sage was compared to. I know this is like non-Christian, so I'm going a little bit, but like I said, I read both, and then both Christian and non-Christian, and then I try to compare them and come to a conclusion that way. Because I do know that, the Bible has been changed, and I don't want to like fully say, oh, just because it's not in the Bible, I'm not going to listen to it. So I like to listen to different things and then just ask God for guidance. Athena was known as like the wise one. She would come up with the strategy. And then so the hero archetype would go to her and get advice from her. So she wouldn't help him so much as in like physical, but more like she would counsel him, give him a strategy, share her wisdom with him, and help him come up with the strategy for war. And it's so funny because I asked my husband to take the quiz, and he is the hero archetype. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. So, like I said, it's not something that I'm like, oh, it's this 100%, right? Because God does say, like, don't, like astrology, which is different. It's not the same thing. But I just thought it was so interesting because it's actually psychology, right? The whole Athena thing, I don't, there's so many things that I still don't understand. I don't know how you would tie all of this in, but it all ties in together. So, so that's how I was finally able to understand what I was meant to do and what my life purpose was. So I wanted to share this with you guys, hoping that this helps you. I know it's a lot. If you are new to this and you've never heard of this before, I want to encourage you to read it for yourself, study it, ask God for guidance, ask Him what is my purpose. And it's so funny throwing something in that's not Bible related. But if you ever watched the Superman movie in Men of Steel, I think they talk about this how they each have a purpose, and then but they actually are told what it is and they're expected to fulfill it, right? But for us, we're given free will, and it's up to us whether we do it or not. But if you are struggling with it, I think one thing to ask yourself is, am I serving? Because that is the main thing. We come here to serve. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe, and send it to someone who you think might enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening.